So being a proverbial prophet these days, it comes with its own confinements. Take the biblical characters Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, and also take Daniel. Now these are 4 guys who were under captivity during the days of Nebuchadnezzar, and I want to highlight their particular captivities, where they were always accompanied in their captivities, even if what they were placed in was a literal death trap. Daniel in the lion's den, come only to find out there was an angel in there with him that stopped up the lion's mouth. So you have that. You know, what does a lion represent? You know, when it can't attack you. You know, that lion can represent an ally, because even if the lion decided not to bite Daniel, it could have killed him with a clawing, a scratching. Could have still used this brute animalistic force to take Daniel out physically, even without needing to use his teeth per se. As far as Daniel's friends, and they had different names, their names were changed under Babylonian rule. So that's something to mention. Their names were changed. Their names were like, at least Daniel's friends, and even Daniel's name was changed to Belteshazzar. But the other, what they called wise men, considered wise men, they were not only smarter than everybody in the kingdom, the sorcerers and magicians included, but these guys, they lived their own way, counter to the customs of Babylon. So these folks was in Babylon, not using Babylonian money per se, not eating Babylonian food in Babylonia. You know, while these folks is feasting, the Nebuchadnezzar eating, you know, while they eating Wagyu steak, you know what I mean? And top-notch everything else. Daniel and his 3 friends are like, yo, we gon' eat vegetables only, vegetables and water, while everybody else feasts on the finest dining and the finest wine. Daniel and his 3 friends were more able, more well, stronger, healthier than the men who ate the rich food. That's another lesson. You know, in this time, what do you consume? You know, in Babylon? Are you eating the Babylonian food in Babylon? Or are you in Babylon but still feasting on more authentic things that you believe in? The choices of Babylon, the choices in Babylon. Just because you're in it doesn't mean you have to be of it. Also ties into the scripture being in the world but not of the world. They were in Babylon, held captive by Babylon, enslaved by Babylon, right? Imprisoned, oppressed by Babylon, but not of Babylon. So you have, what's the other famous story is when they enter the furnace, right? His friends, they get thrown in the furnace for not bowing down to Nebuchadnezzar's statue when the designated time of worship goes. It was like, yo, when the flutes and everything starts to play, you start to see this and that happening, that's when y'all supposed to bow down. That's when y'all supposed to bow down. This is what Nebuchadnezzar's ruling was. And of course they chose not to. You know, they're like, yo, we can't bow down to any god that can be physically seen or physically embodied. We don't bow down to any gods like that. It said Nebuchadnezzar turned purple with rage. In one of the translations, he turned purple with rage. And he's like, yo, look, we got to throw them in the furnace. Not only that, he said, we got to crank the furnace up to 7 times hotter than it usually is. 7 times hotter. Imagine that. And so in it being 7 times hotter, the flames and the heat of the furnace it incinerated the people who were tossing these men into the furnace. And that's the three ones. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who had different names. Again, these were their Babylonian given names. I want to say their original Hebrew names were Azariah, Mishael, and I forget what else. I forget what the other name was. But these guys were thrown in the furnace. And here's the crux of the lesson. Again, coming back to when you're prophetic in this day and time, how being in captivity, you won't necessarily be alone, even though it may appear to be a death trap. So you connect the Daniel in the den with the lions, but at the time an angel was accompanied, and now you got the men in the flaming furnace, the Hebrew boys in the flaming furnace, right? That's cranked up to 7 times hotter than usual. Not only were they not burned, not only did their clothes not have even the smell of smoke on them, but also they said it was a fourth man in there. They said, look in there and see what's going on. Why these men ain't screaming in anguish? Why we don't hear anything? Is the furnace working? Look in there and see what's happening. Might be a malfunction. I might have to have a whole bunch of y'all slain because y'all got my furnace working incorrectly. Nebuchadnezzar was vicious. Nebuchadnezzar was vicious. He was the boogeyman in that time. It was used like a folktale. He said, hey, did you steal that? All right, now Nebuchadnezzar gonna get you. He was the boogeyman for real. They looked in there and said, we see a fourth man, and he looks like the son of a god. He looks like a Christ. He looks like an embodiment of the Father. He looks like an angel. There's 4 men in there. When they took those men out, that's when they began to worship the God that those 3 boys worshiped. So in your captivity, you're not alone in your captivity, even if it appears to be a death trap. So prophets, teachers, seers, readers, channelers, exhorters, preachers, shamans, whoever you are, therapists, cashiers, whatever you are, whoever you are, wherever you at, you're never alone. Even if physically you're by yourself. So another addition to this idea of not being alone, even in captivity. Finally, the final example I want to use, because you had Daniel, you had the 3 Hebrew men in the furnace. Now finally, let's take Nebuchadnezzar himself, because he actually experienced a moment in a season where he was rendered insane. He had a bout of delirium that lasted like 7 years. And in these 7 years, he ended up like growing hair that was like as thick as fur. Like he didn't keep himself up. There was no barbering, no manicuring. This dude was driven into the wilderness. You know, he was at the peak of his boasting, as his testimony would say, because he had gave this account of himself and why he had to respect the God who appeared to the Hebrews. So that's what brought Nebuchadnezzar was even in the spot where even in captivity he wasn't alone, because whoever and whatever this God was, however Jehovah was moving at the time, he was giving everybody the same lesson, no matter what status in life they were. So now you have the oppressor under oppression, and nobody was oppressing him but himself. Remember, he was living out in the wilderness, grew fingernails as long as eagle's talons, went completely mad, complete delirium, complete psychosis, not a mental disorder, but a complete loss of mentality. He had a complete loss of mentality. He didn't have a disorder where you could still, you can still do what you got to do. You still have, you can make your own decisions. You still are, for the most part, social. You know what I mean? No, this guy he had completely devolved into an animal, a beast of the field, as they would say in those days, a beast of the field. So even he wasn't alone in his captivity. So whether you're on the side of the prophet, Prophet, or just on the side of getting profits, Profits, either way, you're not alone, even when you're physically by yourself. Super T Sigma, Sigma Programming. Peace and blessings, y'all.
We knew he was the one. Facts. Here.
You're never alone, your dome is tethered to tones. You can't just weather the Jones, we'll chase them. Regular thrones, embrace it. Never a soul left vacant. Emerald stones got jaded. Entities show up, like who is your folk, just name them. Each mindset's another neighbor. Each psyche forms a major. You could call it demon or angel. Water from these springs clean as a laser. The entertainment world is the woman at the well, and you're Jesus. And they begging for a drink, begging you to link, legend. You like Fetty in the sink, brethren. So these apparitions come with a reverence, and they got bars like a Wi-Fi connection. They vested, and they only gonna have one question: who are you? Cause that's the connection between you and what's manifested. Om Mani Padme Hum. You're never alone. 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 You're never here. You're never alone. I believe in you. I believe in you. I believe in you.